Cianciarulo has another one! Adam survived that one and then takes him wide.
There are riders who win championships, and there are riders who are supposed to change the entire sport. Adam Cianciarulo fell into the second category before he was even a teenager. 11 amateur national titles at Loretta Lynn's ranch, a factory contract at age 7. Comparisons to Ricky Carmichael before he had finished middle school. The industry didn't just identify him as a promising prospect, it pre-wrote the ending of his story. This is what happened when the story refused to cooperate. To understand why the gap between expectation and reality hit so hard with Adam Cianciarulo, you have to understand what he was doing as a kid. Loretta Lynn's ranch in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee is the proving ground of amateur motocross. Factory scouts line the fences. Careers are made and ended on that property. Riders who dominate there get talked about for years. Cianciarulo didn't just dominate Loretta's. Between 2004 and 2012, he stacked 11 amateur national championships there, tying the all-time record for the most titles by a rider in the event's history, a record shared with James Stewart and Mike Alessi.
You know, it was cool to win, don't get me wrong, but I was never like, oh man, I just dominated Loretta's. Like, I'm the man. If anything, I felt like in my head, I had to prove it to myself every time I raced that I was the best guy.
That number alone would be remarkable, but what made the hype surrounding AC unlike anything the sport has seen in years was the way those wins came. He didn't grind out close results. He was routinely the fastest, cleanest, and most technically gifted rider on the property. By the time he was 7 years old, Kawasaki's Team Green Amateur program had him under contract, a move that was almost unheard of at that age.
I was really good when I was really young. So all the sponsors, everything came with that very young. So I think a lot of people think I came from a lot of money and things like that. And I think in my head, once I had all that support, of course, Team Green, I signed with them in 2004. My dad was willing to take the time and coach me and take me all around to be where I needed to.
When he progressed into the super mini classes, Pro Circuit's Mitch Payton locked him into a 5-year deal. The machinery of professional motocross media got hold of all this and ran. Comparisons to Ricky Carmichael, the undisputed greatest of all time, appeared in magazines, on message boards, in pre-race broadcast segments.
Well, what's crazy is I always compared myself to everybody to expectations that I'm going to be Ricky Carmichael.
In 2006, Cianciarulo was 10 years old and still riding a KX65. Reigning champions were already publicly commenting on his speed. He wasn't being built up as a future title contender. He was being treated as an incoming era. As AC himself later acknowledged, that created what he described as mind-boggling weight. Exorbitantly high expectations attached to every single thing he did from that point forward. He grew up believing that success meant becoming the next Carmichael. Anything short of that was catastrophic failure. That psychology matters enormously to what follows. The industry expected his pro transition to be seamless. When his debut was scheduled for the 2013 Hangtown Motocross Classic, the opening round of the Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Championship, the anticipation in the paddock was at a level usually reserved for the eve of a championship. This was supposed to be the moment the future officially started. Then, during the press day riding session, Cianciarulo fell violently ill. He was hospitalized with a 103-degree fever, later diagnosed as severe salmonella poisoning.
I was sick coming into that first race. Didn't have like a whole lot of confidence. I wasn't like, yeah, dude, I'm here to take over.
He missed the first 4 rounds of the outdoor season entirely, robbing his debut of the momentum that had been building for years. When he finally made it to the starting line at the Budds Creek National in Maryland, he was depleted, down in weight and muscle mass, racing hardened veterans who'd already had a month of race fitness on him. He managed top 10 finishes and an impressive podium result in a moto later that season, but the delayed start had given the sports critics their opening, and the murmuring started. That narrative got buried fast when 2014 arrived. Cianciarulo lined up for the Eastern Regional 250 Supercross class, finally healthy and properly prepared. In his very first professional Supercross race at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, he won. Clean, dominant, exactly as advertised. He followed with second in Atlanta, won in Indianapolis, went second at Daytona, then won in Detroit. 5 rounds in, he held the red plate, a 17-point lead over his veteran teammate, Martin Davalos. His starts were explosive. His corner speed was precise. The sport started recalibrating its excitement upward. Round 6 was in Toronto. Running second in the main event, positioned to extend his lead, AC hit the whoop section and was thrown off. The impact separated his left shoulder. What followed is the kind of moment that reveals character. He had the trackside medical staff force the dislocated shoulder back into the socket, remounted, tried to ride on. He lasted 3 laps before the pain made it impossible to hang on. Surgery was confirmed within days. The rest of his 2014 Supercross season and his entire pro motocross campaign that summer, gone.
I think I had like a 15-point lead or something with a couple rounds to go, and then then the injuries started coming. And actually, it's funny that everybody thinks that I tore my shoulder and dislocated my shoulder in Toronto in practice, but I'd actually torn my labrum in my rotator cuff in the off season doing pull-ups.
The first crack in the prophecy had appeared. Everyone told themselves it was a fluke. Geneva, Switzerland, preseason 2015. AC had traveled to Europe for the Geneva Supercross, a heat race warm-up before the American season opened. He hit a concrete wall bordering the track. The other shoulder, the healthy one. Surgery, his entire 2015 Supercross season gone before Anaheim even opened. By the time the 2015 Pro Motocross season started, he'd been sidelined for 14 months. At Hangtown, his return race, he qualified nearly a full second faster than the entire field. The speed was intact. The race fitness wasn't. 8th overall at Hangtown, then a podium, then his shoulder again in practice before RIDE BYND. The 2015 outdoor season was done. February 2016, weeks before the Eastern Regional 250SX season was set to begin. Broken wrist, practice crash. His 2016 Supercross season was over before the gate ever dropped.
Maybe even I look back to 2020, no matter how I played it, I think those early struggles, the early injuries, I think they knock some percentage points off your true potential.
2017 brought the first real return to form. He won at Daytona Supercross, his first victory in over 3 years, added an overall win outdoors that summer. In 2018, he locked into a season-long championship battle with Aaron Plessinger for the 250 West Supercross title, fought it to the Las Vegas finale, lost by 2 points. He won that last round. Then, on the podium, he revealed he'd raced the entire season with a torn ACL and MCL he'd sustained in Indianapolis. He'd hidden it for every round. He was smiling when he said it. The sport noticed. A narrative emerged in the motocross community that AC didn't care enough, that his post-race interviews were too calm, too cheerful, too lacking in the visible agony of a man who truly wanted to win. Compared to the brooding intensity of Ricky Carmichael or Ryan Villopoto, his demeanor read as indifference. The reality, as he later explained at length on Gypsy Tales and Pulp MX, was the opposite. He'd already been through the depths of depression during his rehabilitation stretches, alone, isolated, rebuilding his body over and over. His positivity wasn't a signal of low competitive drive. It was a survival mechanism, built deliberately, to protect his mental health from the weight of expectations that were crushing him. The world read it as not caring. He was doing the exact opposite. The tough block, the snapped shifter. Everyone saw that one coming. What came next left no mark. No wreck to replay, no x-ray to wince at, just a rider who started a moto with full function in his right hand and finished it with almost none. That injury is one of the most quietly devastating stories in the sport, and it starts here. Before we get to the nerve injury, 2019 deserves its own space, because 2019 was the year it all came together, and then fell apart in the most specific, devastating way imaginable. AC dominated the 2019 250 West Supercross Championship. He entered the East-West shootout at Sam Boyd Stadium in Las Vegas, holding a points lead over Dylan Ferrandis. He didn't need to win, he just needed a clean, controlled finish. After 5 years of separated shoulders, torn ligaments, and missed seasons, the championship that had been promised since childhood was sitting right there. He rode smart in the main event, settled into third, managed his gap. The broadcast team was warming up the championship speech. 10 laps in, navigating a rhythm section he had cleared thousands of times, AC made a small miscalculation. He lost the front and went down. He was physically uninjured. He scrambled up fast, but when he picked the bike back up, the damage was done. The crash had twisted the front end, and by the time he got into the mechanics area, the championship was already slipping away. When he finally got back on track, he could only roll the jumps. His race was basically over. The championship went to Ferrandis. A small mistake, a twisted front end, and a championship that vanished within sight of the finish. AC stood in front of the cameras afterward looking gutted, but still composed. He knew exactly what had happened. He'd been comfortable, the title was within reach, and one mistake had taken it away.
It took me a couple years, but my last year on 250 in 19, won a lot of Supercross races, blew the title at Vegas. That sucked. That was another one like Toronto, felt about the same, pretty bad.
But even in that moment, he didn't turn it into an excuse. He owned the mistake, admitted how badly it hurt, and said the only thing he could do was wake up the next day, put his boots back on, and keep working. What happened next showed what he was made of. He channeled the Las Vegas heartbreak directly into the 2019 Pro Motocross season, raced cleanly and consistently, and won the 250 Outdoor National Championship, his first professional #1 plate. He carried that momentum straight into October. At the Monster Energy Cup, a standalone event, massive prize purse, the top riders in the world, he made his 450 debut. In a 3-moto final against Eli Tomac, the reigning 450 champion and his Kawasaki teammate, Cianciarulo held him off, used a crossover move to reclaim the lead after Tomac briefly got past him, and won the overall. Standing in victory lane, he said, "My first thought was, what a life I get to live. That whole race, I knew Eli was behind me. Just the opportunity to race with Eli. He's accomplished so much, and just to be out there on the track with him, I'm stoked." For that brief window at the end of 2019, the gap between expectation and reality seemed, against all odds, to have closed.
But came back, cool story, won the outdoor title, got a factory 450 ride, won Monster Cup. So things were starting to, there had already been 10 of those rock bottom moments where I'm like, it's never happening for me. That sports left me behind. You know, in these key formative years, I wasn't doing, most of the time I was on the couch. So I think to prove to myself that I could get back and I was kind of in prime position to make a run.
The 450 Supercross season began in 2020, exactly as the sport had hoped. Cianciarulo podiumed in his first Premier Class Supercross race at the Anaheim Opener. He regularly posted the fastest qualifying times in the field. He finished runner-up in the 2020 Pro Motocross 450 Championship, 12 points behind Zach Osborne, with 2 overall victories. He was ready. Somewhere in the tail end of 2019, something had already started going wrong. AC began losing strength in his right hand. At first, the assumption was arm pump, a common physiological issue where the fascia around the forearm tightens and restricts blood flow, causing the arms to swell and stiffen mid-race. Every motocross rider deals with it. The medical team treated it accordingly.
I think with what I went through and where I got back to in 2020, I was already pretty stoked to be where I was there, you know, being a front runner in the 450 class. And I think even going into that season, I was dealing with the nerve damage in my arm, right? And there were a lot of times, even those races, getting second in Anaheim, second in San Diego, where it was bothering me, feels kind of like arm pump. But I kind of just ignored it, assumed it was arm pump. And that started to become a problem. And that started to lead to other injuries.
As 2020 progressed into 2021, the problem escalated in a way that arm pump does not. The loss wasn't muscular fatigue. It was neurological. Adam was diagnosed with severe ulnar nerve entrapment near his elbow. The nerve had been compressed, likely by the accumulated trauma of years of professional racing, and the repeated vibrations and landing impacts were actively irritating it every time he rode. A broken collarbone has a predictable timeline. A torn ligament has a known surgical fix. A damaged nerve is something else entirely. In a sport where gripping a 230-pound, 60-horsepower bike over deteriorating terrain is the baseline requirement for survival, a failing grip is a career-ending problem, regardless of how fit or fast the rider is. At his worst, AC would start a moto with full function and lose it gradually as the race progressed. And by the closing laps, he was operating with maybe 30% of his normal hand strength. At times, he could barely feel the handlebars. He underwent a nerve decompression procedure before the 2021 Supercross season. It provided limited relief, severely disrupted his preparation, and still didn't solve the problem. He pulled out of the 2021 Pro Motocross season mid-year. He said, "I lose what feels like most of my strength in my right hand gradually as I'm riding. I've tried to be smart and do my best, but at this point the only logical decision is to get it fixed." Over the following years, he underwent more than 10 separate surgeries, flew across the country for specialized treatments, tried experimental stem cell therapies injected directly into his wrist, elbow, and shoulder. Nothing permanently worked.
I got my collarbone fixed, decided to go to the Stedman Clinic in Colorado to try to do another surgery to fix my arm, and came back getting ready for 2022 season. Jason Anderson was my new teammate. I just remember going faster than I ever had in my life. I was still dealing with my arm. It honestly wasn't any different, but I'm like, we just got to figure out how to ride with it, trying a bunch of different things. And I remember like a week before Christmas, I was going through the whoops, like fourth gear wide open. My hand just slipped off the bar. And I had one of the biggest crashes of my life. Scared me half to death.
The accumulated scar tissue from repeated operations appeared to make the nerve damage worse rather than better. The mental toll was its own kind of suffering. He lived for years in daily uncertainty about whether his hand would function on a given race day. The child who had been told he would change the sport was now a 27-year-old man, capable of matching the field's pace for a handful of laps, who then faded into mid-pack results as his grip deteriorated beneath him. His nervous system was failing him in the one place a motocross rider can't afford to lose function. At the conclusion of the 2024 Supercross season, Adam Cianciarulo announced his retirement from professional racing. His stated reason was that he refused to compete at a standard below his own demands. He retired without ever winning a 450 Supercross main event or a Premier Class championship. He was 27.
It was a relief because I'm not a good quitter, and most of us aren't. But I really think that it was, from my perspective, once you're used to winning or battling for podiums, animating the race, being at the front of the race, I thought that it wasn't going to be realistic for me to get back to that level with my injury. And really not just my hand at this point, it's my shoulders as well. My shoulders were deteriorated from all those surgeries I had early in my career. So
he already knew the career hadn't delivered what it promised. In podcasts and interviews, Adam laid out an honest account of what it felt like to live inside that weight for 2 decades. He said outright that if he measured his career against the standards set for him as a child, to be the next Ricky Carmichael, to rewrite the record books, he was a complete failure. He wasn't softening it or making excuses. He was acknowledging the metric and accepting the result. But the same interviews showed a person who had worked through what that meant and come out the other side with something real. He referenced the concept of the second mountain, David Brooks' idea that a life spent chasing ego-driven success leads to profound emptiness at the top, and that the actual substance of a life is found somewhere else entirely. AC discovered that when he reached the milestones that the prophecy had promised would feel like arrival, the factory 450 contracts, the financial security, the house, the status, none of it erased the anxiety. And when injuries made the career he had sacrificed his childhood for impossible to fully execute, it forced him to face the one thing no title could solve. AC has openly talked about how that expectation shaped his identity from the time he was a kid. When people keep telling you that you're going to be the next great one, you don't just hear it once and move on. You start carrying it everywhere. Every result becomes proof. Every injury feels like failure. Every comeback becomes another chance to finally become the rider everyone promised you would be.
What's crazy is I always compared myself to everybody's expectations that I'm going to be Ricky Carmichael. You take that out of it, you take those expectations out of it, and you look at what I did on a dirt bike. You're like,
that is what makes this story so heavy. It wasn't just that he lost races or missed seasons, it was that every setback seemed to argue against the version of himself the sport had been selling since he was a child. The pressure followed him from amateur dominance to pro circuit, from the 250 class to the 450 factory ride, and eventually into the years where his own body stopped letting him finish what his speed kept starting. But as he got older, his perspective changed. He stopped trying to be Ricky Carmichael. out of a genuine understanding that his peace didn't depend on that outcome. Some parts of his career were never fully in his control. The injuries, the timing, the nerve damage. What he could control was how he handled it. And by the end, he seemed genuinely at peace with the life motocross had given him, even if it never became the career everyone predicted. Immediately following his retirement in May 2024, AC made his broadcast debut at the Southwick National as trackside reporter and color commentator for the Pro Motocross Championship, alongside Jason Wygant and Jason Thomas. 3 weeks after his last race, he was standing at the edge of the tracks he used to race, microphone in hand, watching riders his own age attack the same kinds of sections that had shaped his entire career.
I'd always been very motivated to be David Bailey. Like I wanted to be the voice of Supercross. Like I wanted to be a broadcaster. Even that first year I got hurt in 14, I was 17 years old. Like I was in the booth with Ralph and Jeff. I always wanted to do that.
He knew exactly what they were feeling on the bike. He knew what that pressure cost, and that came through in every word. The qualities that the sport had misread as indifference, the calm, the precision, the analytical detachment, turned out to be exactly what broadcasting required. He noted the respect he received from the riders he was now covering. I don't want to lose that rider side of me because I think it really helps me in my job now, trying to articulate the challenges of trying to win these races. I enjoy it. It's my community. I'll always be a rider and be for the riders. Adam Cianciarulo was supposed to take over motocross. The sport decided that before he was in his teens, built an expectation around it that became its own kind of prison, and then watched as injury after injury, and finally one malfunctioning nerve, made that takeover impossible. He won an amateur record tied only by legends. He won a professional 250 outdoor championship. He won the Monster Energy Cup in his 450 debut. He came agonizingly close to a Supercross championship more than once. He retired at 27, without the 450 titles the industry had assigned to him before he ever turned a professional lap. Drop a comment below. If AC's body held up, do you think he becomes a 450 champion? Or was the hype always impossible to live up to? Thanks for watching, and stay wicked.